And I'll try to keep talking to this mic, so with the cameras and people behind me, I'm try to address both. But basically, I know most of us are here. We had talked about stormwater, and specifically the flash flood that occurred on July 19th. So when we have events like this, we go and try to find data and try to characterize what type of event this was. Obviously pretty significant. So in one area of the city, we have a couple of these gauges that continuously record. But over off Calvin Lane, we have a new wastewater facility. We have a gauge over that way. And that recorded 4.4 inches of rain in an hour and 15 minutes. And so that's a significant rainfall. We actually had engineers from around the state calling us saying, wow, I think you guys had a 1,000-year storm. You know, if you look at some of these charts and the data they're pulling off. So that's way above anything our infrastructure might be able to handle, and really just unprecedented. That I've been doing this 27 years and I haven't seen a storm quite like that. And certainly we have a 100-year storm here on occasion, but something like this, not really, because a 100-year storm I put in here, if you look at these charts that these folks are looking at, a 100-year storm in Jefferson City is estimated to be 3.8 inches in 2 hours. So again, we had 4.4 in an hour and 15 minutes. So a significant storm, even above what we'd expect to try to even route as a regulated storm. Over in Hyde Park, another area of the city over towards the Walmart Menards complex, we have a gauge over there, and that gauge recorded 3.2 inches in basically that same time frame, 4:30 to 7 time frame, and so that's right under the 100-year storm. So very significant throughout the city. Certainly, we got a lot of flooding complaints from basically the channel that goes from Calvin Lane over to Elm, over Christopher Place, and on up to McCarty Street. A lot of flooding there, but that doesn't mean, even out on the west end, had culverts over top, people's houses flooded. 2 or 3 out there. We had some downtown here that flooded out, and we're still getting reports in. So what happens is sometimes we hear from people right away, hey, what happened? Others may be longtime owners and more used to it. Actually, I heard yesterday we had a guy come in and get his building permit to redo his, I believe his electrical or furnace or something that got flooded out in a flooded house that we had not heard of yet. But he was more accustomed that issue would happen to him, I guess, and just took it, you know, and went through the normal channels to get that repaired. About infrastructure, just in general, infrastructure, mostly infrastructure, and not just this city, cities across the nation, typically is designed to about a 10-year storm in residential areas. Sometimes on major arterials or something like that, we'll bump that up to 50, 100 years. But once you get about 100 years storm, that's a pretty big project, like a bridge on Dublin Street, for example. That doesn't mean that the area around it doesn't flood, or the streets. Even on this rain, our new bridge was out of the water, but we actually flooded just down the way to the east of that, where we have some lower inlets. So you kind of plan these. Out on Edgewood, we have a lot of flooding out there by the Brick House Deli, if you're familiar with that area. That culvert often doesn't flood over, but it floods over down the street. So there's usually a relief that these things flood out of. But they're all different. They've all been built over time. Some of them were built to maybe a rural standard, and then the city annexed it. That's kind of what the Edgewood design was. Things of that nature. So it just depends. And many of this some of this infrastructure is a lot older than I am. I'm a little over 50 years old, so you can get the idea. So we have to go back and research, what was the issue. To protect in modern day standards, so what happens is modern day codes, we have a code where we have regulated floodplains. So all creeks have floodplains, whether they're regulated by the feds like FEMA or not. If they're a regulated floodplain, then the banking system would require folks to have flood insurance. And so in this case, it was partially regulated floodplain up into the bulk of Christopher Place, and then below that, it was a non-regulated floodplain. And so people weren't, when they bought a property, they weren't prodded by their bank that they had to get flood insurance. If you're a renter, that's a whole other deal, maybe between you and the landlord. So we have some of that going on as well. But back to infrastructure. So what we do in today's standards is if you're in a regulated floodplain, we say, okay, you have to, any structure opening has to be 1 foot above the regulated floodplain elevation. And there'll be notes on plats so that when your builder or you buy the house, that will be in your title work even. But that's today's standard. So it doesn't do, most of the time when we find these things, or then if it's non-regulated floodplain, we also look at the structure as a rule of thumb needs to be 4 foot above the adjacent road grade or creek bank, or a combination of both sometimes. And so that to protect those openings from being flooded. Doesn't mean your whole yard isn't flooded and completely surrounds you, but it would mean that your structure, your home or business is protected. So all that said, that doesn't do anything. A lot of times what we find is many of these places were built way before those regulations were in place. And probably the city's first stormwater ordinance, very late 80s, early 90s, when some of this started to come in play, and really it's been progressing along since. And for those on the council, they'll know as we get new developments, the staff's pretty strict with folks on this floodplain stuff. It's in our code. We're a participating community in the federal program, so we have to follow those guidelines, or they could up everybody's insurance rates, advice flood insurance, things like that, if we don't. So that's when we get it all the time still today. Hey, this is never flooded. I don't understand, this floodplain is on my property. Why do I have to do this? And that's why we do that, because eventually these floods will happen. You just never know. It's Mother Nature that we're dealing with. Any questions about the codes and where they're at? So a lot of the areas we're talking about, probably the properties were built maybe even in the 60s, and that era, even up into the 80s a lot of times. Now, doesn't mean there isn't a newer property in there somewhere, and we find those on occasion. That we'll find it out on the west end. There was a house built in the, I think it was early 2000s, that was flooding, and they didn't comply with all the notes on the plans and property. And so we worked with that homeowner to modify that home. Of course, it's at their cost to come into compliance, so they could. Actually, they didn't want to buy flood insurance, so they could buy. Everybody in town, and that's another thing. Everybody in the city is eligible to buy flood insurance, and we'll have a little tool here to help show you that. But yeah, so beyond codes, after something like this, the most common question we get is, well, who's responsible for this flood damage? Who is responsible for flood damage to their home or business? Well, the short answer is the property owner. Just like many things, if you were to have a hailstorm or whatever, you got to work with your insurance company. Had a new roof put on my house this year, and many people in the city did. The issue, it does come down to many people, these homeowner policies don't have specific flood insurance. You have to go get it separately, and it's on the owner to do that. Like I said, if you're in a regulated floodplain and you have a bank loan, the bank will make you do it. But absent of that, it's really on the homeowner's responsibility to look into that. And we have some new tools we've come up with. Actually, our city administrator shared one with me, and we had seen some other similar ones, but we're going to have it today and show folks. But basically, it's a really good tool people can use to see their flood risk through town. And I can't remember the exact number, but if you were to look at this this tool we were looking at yesterday, there's probably, I believe it was around 2,500 properties in the city that have a pretty good chance of flooding, and most of those we don't think have flood insurance. So it's a big problem, and it's not just Jefferson City; it's a national problem. And so you'll see tonight, I got an email. There's a company back east doing what they call the Flood Dash, which is a private company, trying to get people to sign up for flood insurance. But anybody, it's a webinar, anybody could get on. But that I see that a lot just because I'm in this field. And the problem is it doesn't make it down to the homeowner level, trying to get folks to sign up to help them with these situations. But that's the long and short of it. The assistance the city can offer is Mr. Fontana over here is our stormwater engineer. Of course, we have other engineers on staff who can help with this. And so what we do is we try to offer assistance to folks of how they could modify their properties and give them some guidance on how that would flood. They could protect their properties from flooding in the future, or at least greatly reduce the potential. And like I said, we do on occasion, people take us up on this. We often tell them, but it's expensive. Yeah. It's like putting a new roof on your house, pretty expensive, but it does alleviate the risk, or at least minimizes it. And I'll show a drawing here. And so basically what that looks like many times, this little drawing here, it's a pamphlet we have downstairs. I've shared it with this committee multiple times. Britt's bringing it up on the screen. But basically, if you look at a house like this on the top one, that's the first one. So water's running in the windows. And this is very simplified. It could be a doorway, it could be anything, it could be a basement window. In the flood levels, water would run in your windows and flood your house, which is what happened to a lot of people probably here today. And so really and this is right out of floodplain regulation code for older buildings, that you would have to modify those windows, make them smaller. It's all based on elevation. With that, there's a battery backup sump pump. And then usually a lot more fill or something is modified against the house to push the water away from the structure. I mean, it doesn't mean a lot won't flood, but this is the exact scenario we got out on a newer home. Like I said, that home that was supposed to be built this way, it wasn't. We worked with the owner, and it ended up, he told me this was 15 years ago probably, but I think he told me some about it. He spent $15,000 modifying his house to get it flood proof. And then, he could sleep at night when it rained hard. So I get that. He said, before he did this, he was up every night, every time it rained, because he was worried about it. And that's unfortunate for folks. And I get that. It's a tough situation. Anything else I want to cover here real quick? Again, we're a participant in this National Flood Insurance Program. We have a little, like I said, our city administrator just forwarded me this link, and we found it to be quite good. I'm going to have Brett Smith, he's sitting back here in the booth, he's been messing with it, kind of show what it does. And the folks who called us ahead of time in kind of general areas, we went ahead, we didn't put your address in here, but we put like a street maybe that you live close to, and just looked at some of the flood risks out of this model. And it, if you play with it, you can do it at home. It prompts you where you can go and maybe give agents that you can get a hold of to help you out. Let's see if I am missing anything. Council, feel free to ask any questions before I get done here. But again, we're trying to get around to talk to everybody. It's a slow process, you might imagine. Usually our point man is Don Fontana. I try to help David Bangy, Britt Smith. We all try to help out when we can. So we haven't got back to you guys. We're apologize for that, but we're working through the list. And another thing. So if you're in the regulated floodplain, this is another thing that's Mr. Fontana's responsibility, is taking a lot of his time. So some of you are in the regulated floodplain and you flooded, before you can repair your structure, there has to be an estimate done. This is national code stuff, but if your repair value exceeds 50% of the repair, you can't just repair it in place. You have to come in compliance with the code. So you'll be doing something like that diagram I showed you, elevating the structure or elevating pieces of the structure, things like that, depending on if it's commercial or residential. And if you can't do that under 50% of the value, then you'll have, if it exceeds 50% of the value, you have to do that. In some cases, people choose just to modify them or tear them down. On a national level, there's always been a lot of discussion of flood buyouts in addition to this. Not a lot of funding for that. I saw some articles recently. Some states are, these are southern states, trying to create funds to help the locals match those monies, because there's still matching money needed, even if you were to get a federal grant like that. Not a very robust program here in Missouri, and so for my looking at it, but that's kind of what I have there, and I'll let Britt go through this flood risk tool just real quick. It's real slick, and we'll use this tool after everybody gets a chance to talk. We can go around and try to, if they want us to in public, to address their area and kind of the background on it. And for those on Calvin Lane, I do have some pictures of some brush. There were some brush issues. We can talk about that later too. Yeah, if that's okay.
This I'll try to make this shorter.
Yeah, you're losing your voice, Britt. Can't hear you. Batteries.
we take that one back?
Just bring it back.
Okay, yes, can you hear me now? We found there's this organization called First Street Foundation that has just launched this this tool that will allow you to look at your flood risk in any property, actually in the United States, not just in Jefferson City. This is a free service and has been put on the website for anyone else. But it's a non-profit research and tech firm. They recently launched this. Actually, it was launched June 29th of this year. And it's a free online tool that makes it easy for Americans to determine their particular flood risk. This is a screenshot from the beginning page, and you just enter your address here, and it'll pop up with information about your particular situation. And I just did this from a standpoint of City Hall, where we're all sitting right now. What this tells us, and this is just a screenshot, there's a whole lot more information whenever you actually go on the website, but in the case of City Hall, 320 East McCarty Street, our flood risk is a 1 out of 10, which is a minimal flood risk. We ran the same thing for different addresses around town, and what we found, again, I said, here's City Hall, the 1 with minimal flood risk. Southwest Boulevard, there was the property there, that flood risk was a 6. This was an interesting feature here, that you have risk that multiplies over time. So they're assuming people have a 30-year mortgage. So this particular area, in 30 years, their risk of flood within that mortgage is about 2/3. 2 out of 3 chances that it's going to flood. Allen Drive was a very similar. Elm Street was a 10, with a 99% chance in the 30-year period that those properties would flood. Nelson Drive, a 7, but again, a 99% chance, et cetera, if you go down through here. So when you look at that site, I want to give me just a second here to use my hands. When you look at that site, this is one area in town here. They're showing dots on top of properties, and the color of the dot is, if they're red, they're an extreme risk, and it's lighter in color as the risk goes down. So, and these particular spots here are not in the federally regulated floodplain. However, they certainly can buy flood insurance. In fact, since they're outside a regulated floodplain, that insurance is cheaper. But to kind of show you, this is what they model as the inundation possibility for flooding in this particular area here. So, if I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has, but that is the essential conclusion of that short report.
Any questions for Britt? Thank you, Britt. Okay, so we have moved to the public comment portion. I think a number of you contacted city staff prior to this meeting to sign up, and when the agenda was printed, it was grouped by neighborhood or street. And so I think what we would like to do is kind of chunk it that same way. So the way on the public agenda started with Southwest Boulevard, was a flooding and infrastructure issue. Next was Allen Drive. After that was the East Elm Street, Ball Hill, and Christopher Place. Is there anybody in the room that doesn't feel like they fit one of those 5 categories for neighborhoods?
East Miller.
Yeah, East Miller. Would East Miller be?
East Miller's down by Christopher Place.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll lump you in at Christopher Place. Is there anybody from Southwest Boulevard? There's a name on the agenda, but I don't see that person having signed off. Okay. Well, we will move on to Allen Drive, and I know Miss James is here and a couple other folks. So I guess in terms of approaching this, I know a number of you represent or come from the same street. So I don't know if you've talked to each other and have shared remarks, or if each individual wants to take a chance just to speak. I guess quick show of hands, how many of you would like to speak today versus just observing the meeting? So if you raise your hand that you're interested in actually speaking. Okay. So let's have like the Allen Drive folks come up first. We got Ms. James, and then if you want to start, and then when you come to the podium, just state your name and what area you're representing, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Jerry James, I'm here on behalf of my mother who lives at 1905 Allen Drive. She's 87 years old, been in that house since about 1964, paid taxes all the way up until current. This has always been a problem, but I understand there's like 575 foot of corrugated drain pipe, I guess it's rusted out, which is causing her backyard to flood. 1909 next to us has sinkholes. The city has been out, so they were just out last week fixing sinkholes, or at least probably about 28 inches deep. They put an aerator in, which I witnessed the day of this last storm, water just spewing out of it, probably at least 24 inches, 30 inches. 1913 on the other side also has sinkholes. You step up into, you go down to your knee, asking for help. So I'd like to know where you came up with this risk factor. When has it been noted? How many times have somebody called up here and asked about Allen Drive? This hasn't always been a problem, and I get the 100-year storms, but if you know there's a problem, the pipes are rusted out, why would you not go to fix those?
And I guess my question for Matt or Brent would be the risk factor. Is that,
Yeah.
that factoring in like our stormwater
Now, this is
system?
a different issue.
She's been there 56 years, y'all.
Yeah.
We grew up in that house, it didn't do this.
And what I was really addressing in that previous discussion was more about flooding from like overland flow or an open
Yeah.
Chief Creek or something.
Yeah,
This is
she's not
completely,
close to a creek.
yeah, this is a different
It's
issue.
just something needs to be fixed, and I don't get it. She's paid her taxes, she's paid her dues.
And I can
Yeah, you want
maybe
to
try it. And the Allen Drive, of course, the street department well knows the area. Don over here has visited probably with them before, but so we've been keeping that pipe in the best condition as we can until we can replace it. It's all a matter of priority and funding. So we don't have a specific fee like you pay for your sanitary sewer to fix stormwater pipes in town. And so it's a slow process. However, on the good side, Allen Drive is on the list of the priority list to be done. We think within the next couple of years that system would be replaced. So that's what the city does do on the other side of infrastructure. We do try to maintain the infrastructure, but unfortunately, the need is great and the funds are limited. And so the best thing for you now, I have to tell many people, well, you're not on even the priority list yet, but this area is, and we believe it's about give or take $100,000 project. And so in the next couple of years, we think we can get to actually replacing that pipe. Now that, for some of
Did they
you,
help her out up until then on restoration, water damage that comes through there? I mean, it's ridiculous. You can't get insurance on that. They say it's your loss.
no, it's a city pipe.
I'm a little upset because we're going with Adrian driving out here. I know maybe it's not the wrong, I do give a big donation out here. But the city also has, you guys are going to be out there working. There's going to be some money involved in that. I ask that you take your report to the city. And I'd like to see them running where I know and not just that. Because it's well documented. Mr. Valentine.
Yeah, I mean, what I said,
Come on over there and step in somebody's back door. And if
it's
you
not-
does, the pipe is rusted out. Dig it up. Put a drainage ditch in. I don't care. And I don't think you care either. It is like this. It's ridiculous. And it's not just these 100-year floods where the child is. When it drains, it's messed up.
yeah.
That water is just running underneath. They're tearing up people's foundations, going into their homes. the yard, I mean, what good does it do to come out and fill up those sinkholes? And they've done that over and over again. Anyway, are we gonna have this once in a while too? We're just,
Yeah, this is a
I'm gonna
monthly
come back
meeting.
until we get it done.
So-
Otherwise, I'm gonna seek legal counsel because it's ridiculous.
Well, like I said, it is on a priority list and the
Can I
money
get that in writing?
will now.
They can have to tell my mom who's 87, 85. There's not even a pipe in the back. She's not sick.
There
We
is a
grew
pipe.
up there, we built the house.
There's a pipe.
Thank you.
There- Anybody else from Allen Drive here to speak? All right, next I have East Lake. Is there another one? I'm sorry, was there another one? Next I have East Elm. And first on East Elm. If you're here from East Elm area, because I've got a couple streets that aren't necessarily East Elm, so it's challenging for me to determine if you're counting yourself with East Elm. If you're here from East Elm, just show of hands that wish to speak. I've got 3, so we can start with you here and work our way back. That's okay? All right, thank you.
My name is Denise Fry, and I reside at 1414 South Street. This house has been in my family since the mid-60s, probably. My grandmother lived there. I moved in 2001 after my death. We've been through the flood of 93, 94, and 95. And never have I had 6+ feet of water in my basement. I had windows broken out. I had a door broken in. Obviously from debris, it was not from water pressure. I have lost a significant amount of my backyard in Welsh Creek. Welsh Creek is a main artery in the city, and it needs to be addressed. I mean, I don't know what can be done about it. It is a very, very big issue. I mean, I'm dealing with this by myself. I call my insurance company. Insurance doesn't handle runoff. They consider it runoff and groundwater. This was not runoff and groundwater. This was a wall of water. They come down, they got my house, they got my neighbor's house. They lost half of their stuff in their basement because they live in their basement. I lost antique furniture that's been in my family for over 100 years. Everything's ruined. I reached out for help as far as charities. I've got no help at all. I mean, this is sad for our community. But this West Street really, really needs to be addressed, because if I were to sell my house, there's not one person in their right mind that would buy my house. And the last house before you get to the highway patrol. And literally on one side of my house, I can walk out 3 feet, drop down into the creek. I have lost that much in my backyard, my property. When I was growing up, my grandmother had a 5-foot deep pool back there, above ground, but it was a good size. You couldn't take a kiddie pool back there. That's how much in my backyard I got. It's pretty. I've seen them twice in the years that I've been there. Maybe get a bobcat, scrape out the bottom of it. I mean, this really has to be addressed. This Wares Creek is the main artery, and it's a very big issue. And that's all I got.
Bog's Little Bog.
That
It's
bog,
a tributary to Box Creek.
Oh, Little Bog, right?
Yes.
well, it literally runs my backyard. I'm not gonna get by it. That's it. And that just breaks my heart. That's all I have to say. Very upset about this. Thank you.
Before you start, so Steve, you want to say
I'm
something?
just gonna say, if Mr. Fontana hasn't been after the property now, would it make sense to maybe have him at least go out and take a look and and see what he may be able to.
Yeah, we're trying to get through all the lists. Like I said, this is a long
Is
list.
that, is hers on the list?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then, I don't know, Matt, is there, may have been out when you talked about it earlier, but any merit to talking about, if there is a water conveyance on private property? Like,
Yeah, I guess I didn't mention that, as far as the open channel, codes and who's responsible for creeks and things that aren't piped, like the individual before had the pipe in the backyard on an easement. And so city does, try to take responsibility of that and fix those as we can. Of course, everything we fix, including streets and every other thing we add is always budget related. And so there's a process you go through to get those done. And stormwater does take a lot. Now, on an open creek, like the Wares Creek or Hogs Creek or whatever, those move from property to property. And if you live next to a creek, you're kind of responsible for any maintenance that you may want to undertake as far as erosion control and things like that. And that's not just the Jeff City standard, that's a national standard that we follow.
Where's yours?
So, my name's Joseph Bonhorst. My wife, Bryn, 4 girls, and I live 1412 East Elm. The house has been in our family since 1955. We never had a creek up in the basement, including the flood in '93. I've lived in this house for 14 years. In that time, throughout the years, I've noticed the water getting into the yard more and more. They keep building houses up creek, taking away earth for the rain to absorb into, and not doing anything with the creek, not cleaning it, nothing. July 19th, the fire department did a water rescue in front of my house because the creek came from the back of my house to the front, flooding the street. My wife, Bryn, and I lost everything we owned downstairs because it was a living quarters. We had over 4 feet of water in our basement. After the cost of debris removal, cleaning, the loss of contents, hotel stay, and rebuilding, we're at $50,000 out of pocket. Insurance is not covering any of it because we were told we were not in a flood zone, therefore we don't have flood insurance. We didn't just lose contents, we lost our security. Now every time it storms, my girls, my wife and I worry this is going to happen again. And I keep hearing budget. This was not in my budget, $50,000. Since 1955, this has never happened. So now we're having to pull this out of our pocket. And just to give you an idea, I do have some pictures if you care to see it. This is an air conditioning unit. You can kind of tell how high it is off the ground. Okay. This is the same air conditioning unit. This water came rushing in my house. So the whole sump pump idea isn't going to work, battery operated or not. This is my basement that has water in it. And it wasn't clear water. It stank terribly. My concern isn't just the rain and runoff, but it's the lack of the creek being cleaned up. Just down the street from my house, just down the street from Denise's house at this boat, there's a culvert that goes underneath East Elm Street. It's constantly backed up full of debris, leaves, bushes, trees. A lot of that went floating down my yard. This is a backyard where the creek is supposed to be. Now it's taking up my whole yard. So maybe a little cleaning might help as well. Thank you.
I would want to say, when you do notice a culvert plugged or something, it's a constant battle for our crews to go about town. You can imagine how many culverts there are. But we do rely on residents to kind of help us with, say, hey, the creek or the culvert is clogged, please come out and get it cleaned and that's a service we do.
This is an every time it rains thing.
Right, and that's another problem with all culverts. I mean, as we have, especially on the big rains like this, you'll get the water gets out of the creek banks, it grabs everything out, laying on the forest floor, and brings it into us, whether it's leaf, fresh, whatever you want to say. We've seen cars blow through creeks down here by Wares Creek. They'll get caught and end up on the other side of the highway. So, you know, we do try to keep those clean, but every time when it does rain, that is a problem of debris hanging up on culverts, and we'll talk about the fall fill one soon. But if you notice it after a big rain, we try to look at it and fish that stuff out.
So is there a way that they can come down and make the creek wider or deeper? Because the problem is, of all the years I've been there, for the first 10 years, it was almost unheard of to have water in my garden. Then we started getting 6 inches of water. Then it was a foot of water. It never got close to being the top of that retaining wall. And it just seems to be the more houses they build up, the more water we get. And now we got this going on. Well, you're talking about building something around your house to keep water from coming in your house, have a 3.5 foot retaining wall that was already there. So now I got to raise it another foot, 1.5 feet, just to keep it from coming into my house again. We plan on rebuilding, because like I said, that was my living quarters for my wife and I downstairs. But before we do that, I got to spend more money beyond the $50,000 just to raise a 3.5 foot retaining wall so we can live down there comfortably.
Yeah, we would certainly like to visit with you about it and offer some advice.
I appreciate it.
There's one more to speak from East Elm.
Morning, folks. My name is Harry Spawnhorst, and I've been associated with the property at 1412 East Elm Street in Jefferson City my whole life. 62 years. I've never seen anything like what happened on Sunday, July 19th this year, when the storm water breached that 3-foot wall and just ripped everything out of that whole floor. It literally broke through 2 wooden doors to access that house and a 3-foot retaining wall first. So it destroyed very well everything: the bedroom, bathroom, shower, entertainment room, home office, laundry room, workshop, along with a fully stocked refrigerator because of this corona crap, and a freezer. They were stocked, packed, to try to avoid being out in public. Okay, so they lost everything. So we're not alone in this situation either. We've seen storms like this before, but they were never a concern. Never have been in all the years that I've been associated with that house. And several homes along that creek were affected for the first time, and we believe this is a compound problem. Number one, due to all that new construction, like he said, on Bald Hill, the ground's got nothing to absorb because it's all concrete and asphalt. I know that. What you do, you just build on with, but you need to fix the problem where everything's going to go after that. Number two, just off Bald Hill, someone cut down, we don't know who did it. They cut down a bunch of trees and crap, and when they left it later, it was never picked up. So that culvert at the bottom of Bald Hill was just completely blocked. And there's photos showing them. Normally, that culvert takes storm water, it takes the sticks and stuff. They've always gone right through there. It's not ever really been a problem. Okay, with this culvert blocked, this created a lake effect. It got bigger and bigger and bigger until the flood water had a very wide berth. I personally live on Cardinal Street, but I own that home on 1412 East Elm. We had to run out on Cardinal Street in my backyard and save a utility trailer that was up into my yard because the creek came up and got it. It was on its way down when my wife and I had to grab it. Okay? And keep in mind that this creek is directly attached to the Missouri River, and it dumps out at Riverside Park And we've never had any concerns even during the Great Flood of '93. Okay, number 3, on around the week of July 5th. This is just a couple of weeks before that storm. One of our sons with one of his friends was walking their dog, and they decided to walk down to the creek. And this is at the farthest most east end of Dunklin, where Dunklin dead ends. Are you familiar with this? Okay, you keep on walking like that street kept going, go down into the backyards to the creek. They found, oh, and by the way, this spot right here is about 100 yards from 1412 East Elm and this Fry's house. Okay, they found a broken sewer pipe. This pipe literally crosses the creek. And what they did is they said it had all kinds of black, nasty, stinky waste was spilling out directly into the creek, is what they told us. But they immediately called DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and they came out immediately. Within an hour, they were there. And they came in right away, and they told our son, and I quote, "You probably saved the city millions." Okay, and this explains why the water that got into our son's house smelled like an outhouse. When I walked down into that, I heard water running because the toilet had neutralized itself, and the flapper couldn't shut the water off. And when I went down into there, it smelled just like an outhouse. And I'm a fisherman. I go to a lot of parts where there are outhouses. I've been in them. It smelled like that. It was horrible. Now, on July 29th, this was just, let's see, on Wednesday, July 29th, then the contractors came out and fixed this sewer pipe. They dug it all up, fixed it, and then laid concrete right over it. So where the concrete lays is in the creek. So right now it's fixed, it's great. But between then and now, there was crack in our basement on 1412 East Elm.
And everybody downstream.
And everybody downstream. It was nasty smelling. It smelled flood water before, and it smells like rotten vegetation. This smells like an outhouse. Okay. Okay, it's believed that most of us were turned away by our homeowners insurance because this situation isn't covered. I was told we can't get it because we're not in the floodplain. So now I'm seeing that we're number 10 on y'all's list as a floodplain. Okay, when I spoke with the Associate City Councilor, Brian Wolford, is he here today? What's that? Brian is here?
Brian's not here.
Okay, Brian's not here. Well, he was really nice. He was really nice and he was sympathetic. But then he also told me if this disaster was on a larger scale, the governor would step in. Right? This is what he told me. So I would think that this is on a smaller scale, the city would step in and help its citizens at a crisis. Just this one time. You know? And any relief from the city would go a long way and would be very much appreciated. I just want to thank y'all for the time for hearing me out. Have a good day.
I would like,
You have any questions for me?
I would like to note one thing about the sewage issue that we were contacted July 16th, and that was a highway patrol lateral line, state highway patrol coming over to the sewer. And so we contacted them, and that was their contractor fixing that line.
Okay. Well,
Now, if there was sewage in there, there might be some, I'm not a lawyer, and they had a contractor there working, and the hole was left open. There might be some issue with the liability of that contractor in the state there.
Well, there would have to be two, the way it smells.
Yeah, I mean, that was their lateral line, their sewer.
So any advice, any point of a direction that we can go to get help. If you want to wash your hands of it, pass it off to the next
That's why I
guy.
said I wanted to talk to, I guess it was your son
Would be
there.
great.
Yeah, yeah. We'd like to talk about that issue.
Like I said, I'm a homeowner, buying from me, and, we're just about there. Thank God.
Ken?
Yeah.
Can I just add that, we, staff did submit, based on the flood, we did submit to the state, a request to make a declaration. They've got some very high thresholds and that was declined, but we did at least make that request to the state to, make an emergency declaration, and they declined to do so.
Anybody else from the East Elm area? My next location is Bald Hill. Somebody are here from Bald Hill to speak. Okay. I guess we'll start in the front up here and then work to the two behind you. So here. Okay.
Good morning, councilman, councilwoman. My name is Chantal Dooley. I lived at 1402 Bald Hill Road with my then fiance, now my husband, 5-year-old stepdaughter, 20-year-old niece, and our pets. These past tense because our house was completely taken from us. And in the same situation as that gentleman, we don't have $50,000, $60,000 to bring our house back to livable condition. So our lives consist of storage units, living in a small unfinished basement with myself, my husband, our 5-year-old stepdaughter, our 20-year-old niece, and our 3 dogs, one of which is a Great Dane. So very small living conditions. On July 19th, we got back from a camping trip. We cleaned up the house, unpacked everything. My niece and I went and took a nap. My fiance came in and said, panic. He said, hey, have you been outside? I said, no. And he said, I think our house is getting ready to flood. Thought he was absolutely crazy. I've been in my house 15 years. Never once have I ever had an issue with flooding at our home. I walked outside, and as many of you people have testified, our house was surrounded by raging waters. Cars are starting to move down the street. We had no way of getting out of here, and it was moving closer by the second, which is the most helpless, completely terrifying feeling to sit there and think, how am I going to get my family out of this house? We've all seen television shows, and we've seen the news when hurricanes and massive floods come through, houses are taken, people are sitting on the roofs of their house. I mean, it sounds crazy, but that's what flashes through your head. It is complete panic. When I walked outside, it wasn't quite to our house yet, and I told Jerry, I said, I'm going to go in the basement and check on the basement. I wasn't down there 3 seconds. It is 10 steps from our carport to our basement steps. I was not down there 3 seconds, and our window wells were completely filled with water. And I turned around and I told Jerry, I said, we need to get buckets. We need to get that water out there. And I know Moore said that every window started busting in. It took all of 7 minutes to completely fill our basement up with 7 feet of water. So I ran to the storage room, which is on the opposite side of the windows next to the steps, to try and grab whatever I could. I mean, all our memories were down there, you know, in our storage room, along with all of our wedding decorations, as we were set to get married in 3 days. I don't know if any of you have planned a wedding. You may have planned a wedding. Sorry, gentlemen, but they're not usually involved much in it. Well, let me tell you something. 3 weeks before a wedding, a massive flood is not what you want to deal with. And decorations are expensive. So I walked to the basement. It took all of 7 minutes, as I was saying. I ran in. I was able to get 1 box of decorations before it was at our knees, and we had to get out of it. On top of just bringing the house back to where it was, we lost our water heater, our air conditioner, our HVAC system, our furnace, half electricity to our house, the ductwork, and piping was burst out from the water rushing down the walls as it blew out the walls of our basement. So about 20 to 30 minutes after the water came in, the water had backed back out. And in doing so, as they were saying, we found the trees that were cut down. that had completely blocked. It's not a culvert, it's a two-sided bridge. There were two large openings. This is not something that gets caught up by a limb that fell off the tree. These were tree trunks. These were large parts of cut down trees that were in this area. On top of it, city property sits right above our houses, and they put two holding tanks in there that is supposed to stop any water from getting out of that area. I don't know why they put them there. Clearly, they thought this was an issue. I've never had this issue before. I don't think my neighbors have had this issue before. But where were these 50,000, 500,000 gallon holding tanks that fit? Because the sensors never went off. So the city can say all they want. We didn't cut them down. It's not our fault. And they may not have. We've sunshined the city to ask, who cut these trees down on your city property? And we still have not got an answer of who cut these trees down. Whoever cut these trees down is responsible for a lot of flooding. I mean, I don't know how we can sit up here and see just so much pain and so much loss for all these citizens that have been in this town their entire lives and not do anything about it. It is unfair to be saddled with this kind of loss. I mean, we've lost our home, our savings, tens of thousands of dollars of belongings that were in that basement, memorabilia, family memorabilia, all our baby pictures, you know, stuff that we can't recover and we will never get back again. That may not mean anything to you, but it meant the world to us. And I just don't understand how we get set up there and we can say that. It's time that the drainage system for this city has been an issue for a long time. And I understand that you guys are working on it and I don't fault you for it, but you keep telling us, well, you know, it's homeowners' responsibility. If they're not in a flood zone, then they should go get, it's their responsibility on their own to go get flood insurance. Do you know how much flood insurance it is? This isn't Country Club Drive we're talking about. We're not talking about people that are rolling in money right now. We're talking about people that pay their taxes, they put what they can in savings, they do what they're supposed to do. Maybe the city should get flood insurance to cover the people that aren't in floodplains. And I'm sorry, I looked at your floodfactor.com. Let me tell you something about that. I'm not like, oh, good for me, I have friends in FEMA, but I did reach out to some friends in FEMA in the beginning and friends in SEMA because I want to know what we can be covered on. Can the country step in for natural flood disaster? Can the city step in? And they looked up our flood zones. They say that Bald Hill is at a 910, 99%. When they looked us up, we were in a level zone CX, stating that we can cover a 500-year flood level and that we are in the minimal flood level zone. And now all of a sudden, we're at a 910 after all our houses get destroyed in that area. I think that's absolutely amazing how FEMA, who updates on their flood factor every single day, now is stating that we're a 910 when we were a minimal flood zone. Look how many people have stood up here and saying during massive floods in our state, we had a massive flood last year. During massive floods in our state, never had a drop of water in their basement, never flooded their basement. And now everything is gone. This has taken all our security, all our peace of mind. And on top of it, it's taken all our future dreams. Do you know how large of a hit it was? I know my fiance and we bought land just a month before this happened. We had our own dreams of what we wanted for the future. And our savings have been completely depleted. And our home is completely gone. And I want you guys to think about how much that hurts. And when we called the city about this and talked to Brian Wolford, oh man, I tell you what, I am so happy he's not here because I have some words for him. To stand there in that kind of pain and be laughed in your face the entire time he tried to talk to him and him just state to me, it's okay. I've had water in my basement too. It'll be fine. You've had 7 foot of water in your basement. It's gonna be okay. In such a condescending voice and just laughing at me. And let me tell you what, I'm not one that usually gets her feelings hurt very easily. But if I could reach through that phone, I might have just strangled that man. And from what I understand, that is not the first complaint that he has got on how he treats citizens. I don't need pity from anyone, but I need you to be a decent human being and be understanding of the situation. And then I have one more thing for you. That I really don't see. So a couple days after the flood, I received a phone call from the city of Jefferson, is what I was told on the phone. And then a couple days later, or about a week later, I received a denial from the city of Jefferson's insurance company saying, oh, well, the city said that it rained a lot, really hard, and so they're not responsible for it. Which, let me tell you what, I'm more than happy to show you that letter. And let me tell you what, it has rained a lot hard in the last 15 years. You got people that are sitting up here, their houses are 62 years old, 65 years old, 87 years old. And they haven't had this issue before. They've never lost their house in a flood before like this. You can tell me it's a 1,000-year flood all you want, and I believe you. But there is no reason we should all be saddled with the losses of our homes and everything else. But when I called the claims adjuster and I spoke to her, I said, I've never spoken to you before. Why have I not spoken to you if there was a claim filed in my name? And she goes, oh yeah, we did talk just about a week ago. I called you and asked what happened. And I said, well, I spoke to someone who identified themselves with the city of Jefferson, not as a claims adjuster for the city of Jefferson. She never once asked to see pictures of the blockage. She never once came out to her area. She never once contacted us or any of my neighbors. She called us, asked what happened, I told her what happened. I'm not sure if she called any of the other neighbors. I haven't spoken to them, so I'm sorry, I can't speak on behalf of them. Called me, asked what happened. I told her what happened, and that was it. And she went straight out the city saying, well, it rained a lot, sorry. Well, yeah, it rains sometimes. I understand there's natural disasters, but we can't be saddled with this. We can't lose everything that we have. And if you are going to sit up here and tell us that we're responsible for that, I'm sorry, but shame on you too. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Upton, and I live at 1312 Falls Hill, Chantel. I'm a single mom with a 7-year-old son and a lot of pets. On July 19th, around 5:30, I was just at home. We're finishing a piece of furniture in the garage door open, having a grand old time with my dog. Noticed it started to rain a little bit. So I closed the garage door and went upstairs. About 15 minutes later, my dog was throwing a fit, and I said, the dog's got to go outside. But when I opened my front door, instead of seeing my yard and the street, I saw a literal flood. The water was so deep and flowing so fast, it was like a river. It was so scary that my dog would not go outside. He went hid in his kennel. And oh my God, I gotta go find my car. The water was up over the tires of my car. At this point, I thought, better go make sure there's no water coming under the garage door. I didn't want piece of furniture out working on to get wet. When I got to the landing of my stairs, in that short 15 minutes, the water was already up to the second stair. When I stepped in, it was over my knees. And it wasn't just standing water. It was flowing so fast through my house that I could not stand up. So my entire basement, garage, storage room, living room, bar, laundry room, bathroom was underwater. I was just devastated. All of my son's toys were underwater. 2 washers, 2 dryers, deep freeze full of food, refrigerator full of food, couches, TV. And those were the things I could replace. The things I couldn't replace were 2 pieces of furniture that were my great-grandmother's, over 100 years old. In a piece of that furniture was my 27-year-old son's baby book. My son is currently deployed in Afghanistan. So before the cell service went down, I was able to call my mom. We had a company come down within a few hours, but by then it was too late. I'd lost all the flooring, carpet, walls, everything. It took that company 4 days and about 10 guys to clean everything out and dry it out. A 7-year-old was not allowed to come home. So as a single mom, due to COVID, gave to that, I'm having to work from home during a flood in my house. The 10 construction workers. And my 74-year-old mother working 12-hour days to move everything I own outside, to clean it and pitch what she could. But I was, able to help at lunch and after 5. So the Monday after this happened, I called the city attorney, wonderful Brian Wolford, for help since it was, the creek behind our house that flooded, causing the water to come in our houses. And to make a point, you said, if we live on a creek, it's our responsibility to keep it clean. Well, I don't live on the creek. The creek is 2 houses up on the other side of Calvin. So I don't think it's my responsibility to move the trees and move everything, to make sure it doesn't come flying through my house. But when I called Brian Walford, I'm like, hey, you guys were over here working a year or so ago, cut some trees. They just laid there. It's now blocking the bridge and the culvert and whatnot and diverted, created a lake and a river, whatever, in our house. His reply was, the city never did any work over there. Click. That's it. No, I'm sorry. No, nothing. The only sorry I got was from Ken Hussey when I called to talk to him. So there are 8 of us in my neighborhood that I know of affected by this flood. And the city has offered 0 help. We see fancy charts that I doubt the validity of their information. We've had to contact our city councilman, the mayor, state reps, FEMA. We've had to do all of this ourselves, all the while continuing to work, continuing to clean up, remodel, and parent, and take care of our animals. I'm foster mom now, Chantel's cat. I cannot sell my house in the condition that it's in. It's cost tens of thousands of dollars just for the cleanup. Thousands more to knit waving flooring, new walls, just so I can sell my house. I have to borrow money to do this. Money that I don't know how I'm going to pay back. Can't sell my house as is because I lose over $50,000 in equity. I worked for 5 years to accumulate that equity, and in 15 minutes it was gone due to no fault of my own. If the creek had been cleaned up as it should have been, this would not have happened, and my child would not have to live in what looks like the war zone, while my other child is in an actual war zone. And I would really like my 7-year-old to have toys to play with, instead of, oh, we have to paint tonight, or, we can't really have dinner because mommy has to work to pay for this cleanup. Our insurance companies won't pay because we don't live in a floodplain. Lived there for 5 years. Every year we renew our insurance. I ask about flood insurance, just because of the 1993 flood, thinking, well, maybe there'll be another flood. My parents lost an entire home in the 93 flood. No, insurance won't give it to you. You're not in a floodplain. Never have been, never will. And this never should have happened. There's no reason any of our houses should ever flood like this. The city took care of the creek like they're supposed to. I pay my taxes every year. I vote every election. And the leadership of the city needs to step up and do their jobs and quit trying to pass the buck, quit denying their responsibility in this issue. Where is the hashtag JC Strong now? Or is that just something that you all put on Facebook to look good for the masses, you know? And I've lived in Jeff City all of my life. Graduated from Jeff City High School, raised my first son here. And up until now, I have always been proud of my town. Not anymore. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Cindy Mcdonald. I live at 1522 Calvin Lane. I feel like I've been here several times, the same kind of issue for our area. I inherited the house from my parents who moved there in 1974. The community has come up here to the city council time after time asking for help with this creek, asking for help not to clear off the hill across from us and build houses, asking not to clear off Bald Hill Road further up and build houses without doing something about water control. And nothing has ever been done. At one time, they told us they were going to build a collection pond or a collection something further up the creek. That never happened. And so this is always a disaster waiting to happen. 4 years ago, my basement was flooded with sewage, and I had to completely redo it at that time. And now 4 years later, I had 3 feet of water in my basement, and I lost everything. Hot water, washer and dryer, furnace. My car was in there, and the water busted through my garage door and flooded everything. So this is really crazy that the city doesn't take seriously stormwater control. And I understand budget concerns, but I think the city needs to rethink their budget priorities and do something for infrastructure in this city. Because this is not going to go away, and your 10-year standards, you know, storms have changed. I don't care if you believe it or not, but we do have a climate change, and we have storms that just dump water. They stop and they dump water wherever they are. This isn't going to change, and we are in a huge hilly city, and we've got places that are going to be naturally collecting water, and I'm in one of them. And like I said, Bald Hill didn't help with all the water coming down and nothing being done to help control it. So I'm asking, please rethink your priorities as a city for infrastructure. Instead of keep repaving roads that don't need to be repaved or tearing down trees and putting in new trees that don't need to be replaced, please consider infrastructure for the city. We need help. And we can't live like this. It's demoralizing. Thank you.
Anybody else from the Baldville area? Last area I have on the list is Christopher Place. Who's here to speak on Christopher Place? What name is yours, sir?
Anybody else? My name is Pat here. I got a couple of apartments over on 410, 413 Christopher Place. And I've got lost. I've got 2 tenants that are displaced. 3 days before the flood, I had a tenant upstairs pass away. His sister has lost her property. Ernest Smith, you got seen him all on the news. He's got COVID now. So much for the sad stories we got to tell you guys. How many stormwater evaluations in the past 20 years have been done in Jefferson City? Question. How many? Don, do you know?
Burns and Mcdonald did a study in early 2003 to 2007.
What goes back to 1986? Let's look back to 1986 and how many stormwater evaluations have been done in Jefferson City. Let's get that data.
Sir, could you just speak in the mic so the folks
Oh, it's online here. I'm sorry. Since 1986, how many stormwater evaluations have been in Jefferson City? This question needs to be addressed and answered, okay? Doesn't have to be right now.
Yeah, we can try to collect some of these questions and put the information back out.
Another question is, what is the size of area that collects that water that feeds into Bald Hill Road all the way down to Christopher Place, all the way out to the river? What's the size of the area? The big hollows that goes all the way to Seven Hills Road, all the way over to Clark Avenue, and all the way over to Eastland, that area, compared to other areas in Jefferson City that collect water. What's the size of the culvert underneath East McCarty Street that the Little Boggs Creek feeds into? Don, you should know that answer. Don, you should know that answer.
Yeah, I'd have to look up the street plan, but I don't know the answer.
And my next question is, how many times has that culvert been evaluated and deemed insufficient in size? That answer will need to be addressed for all of us. Because what we see here, folks, you guys are all upstream, most of us, except the Allen Drive problem. You guys are all upstream from this one culvert. Did anybody see on KRCG News the 55-gallon barrel drums bobbing in that culvert during that storm, blocking it? Okay, so my understanding is beyond that culvert, there was no flooding at all. Beyond it meaning going north into the river.
There were two homeowners that were on Southtown and Grant Streets that had gotten water in their house that wasn't deep.
Okay,
That is your point.
good point. You have a microphone too? Thank you.
Well, I think in this part, we're trying to get the testimony and then we'll try to answer the questions as we can, put them all back out. Yeah, typically is how we run it.
I think that, I assume.
I still have questions.
I assume city staff have answers to a lot of these questions, just not really available. in this meeting.
Well, that's what I'm addressing. Okay. Republic Waste has a 5-yard dumpster in the backyard of my apartment at 413 Christopher Place. They can't get it out. They won't get it out. It stinks. So whoever's in charge of that, I've called them several times. We finally got the operations manager. He was very rude to me. So as of today, it still sits there. I feel for us, I didn't have my home in there. But I had tenants. And long-term tenants. I've had that property 20 years. And like some of you guys said, it's never gotten that high. There's something wrong here. Climate change, insufficient stormwater drainage, infrastructure. Thank you. I gotta go more.
Two more from Christopher Place.
Good morning, gentlemen, ladies. My name is James Strobel. I'm in a lot home house over on 421 Christopher, right across the street from the apartments. Don's been out there. He's been great working with us on it. Some of the things that our concerns is that during this flood, talking with the neighbors and stuff that's around there, all the water that came up into the house through the sewers. People tell us that it was like a fountain blowing up out of your toilets. Even in our house, it was the same way in the house that we own. It was like all the pressure is just blowing up through there. So that's a concern somewhere along the line, getting fresh water back into the sewer. So there's a problem there. The other issue is, we talk about the creek, and that creek flows behind there. It's always got debris going down through it. There's hardly ever any water in it until you get these floods like this here. So something happened up above that created it. In our backyard right now, I have 2 to 3 foot of debris and trees that are not my property that came down from everywhere else. Next door, there's a 3-foot round tree that's uprooted, that's laying down there, that's going to create. So I guess my question is the city going to be able to assist in any of this debris removal that's in our yards and stuff that we got? Because I have no way of getting stuff back there to haul stuff out of here. I'm going to be out the expenses, which I'm already out, like everybody else is saying, tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, just cleaning the inside of the house was over $15,000 that we had to pay out. That's just for the cleaning of it. We haven't even started anything else. So, we're working with Don, and it's been great trying to help us out with things that we need. But the outside, and we talk about insurance. Some people are lucky enough to have flood insurance, but not everybody can get flood insurance. Our renter, she lost everything that she had in that house. I mean, everything. They barely got out as the water's coming in the door. They're trying to drive out. So now we have, she's displaced. We've helped as much as we can with that. But now with all the cleanup outside and everything else, it's a mess. And the creek is going to get worse. And like you were saying, down on the party, that area there where that bridge is at, and that culvert, it collects more, but then it backs up. So now, if we get rains before we get any of this cleaned out, we're going to have this mess again. Because I guarantee you, the amount of stuff that's in our backyard, in our neighbor's backyard there, will clog that drain up again with the trees and stuff that's there. But right now, I have no way of doing it. I don't have the money to go out here to pay people to come in with big pieces of equipment to move all this stuff, let alone get rid of it. But yet, everybody here, is out, having to figure out on their own how to do this stuff. There should be some way to assist, in helping get this stuff taken care of and fixing the long-term problem. The long-term problem is there is something wrong with the stormwater drains and the sewer drains getting at here. Coming down Christopher, I wasn't here, but my wife she seen it with the manholes that was blown up, parts of the road that was blown up out of it. And I understand that Don gave me good explanations for a lot of the stuff, but there's issues that's there that needs to be addressed. And the concerns with the budgets, everybody always talks about budgets. Everybody knows that. But when you're talking to citizens don't care about the budgets. They care about results. They care about getting things done for themselves. For the people that do not have the insurance or the capabilities of doing it, that's what a lot of the people are asking for. It's not just about getting money back, but helping fix the problem and taking care of the citizens of the city. I grew up here. I no longer live in the city itself, but I did grow here. I went to school here. I love the city, but this city has never really taken care of its citizens like it should. And that's where a lot of the issues that have come along. So the people just be patient with them, that everybody's trying to get through this. And before we start getting more rains, we're going to have these issues again. And you're going to have more people sitting here doing the same thing because the issue's not getting fixed. So that's what I have. I'm just trying to figure out how we can do something to assist people in getting rid of some of this debris, taking care of the issues that's out here, and to fix, what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody that wishes to speak? Please, sir.
My name is Jim Nichols. I live at 1512 East Miller Street, which is right across from Christopher Place. I've lived there a little over 40 years. And addressing the East Elm Street issue, there's a pile of gravel right before the culvert that goes under East Elm right now that's never been moved since this. It's probably this high. I mean, if you take that out, that's going to give the stream more room to for the water to, to spread out rather than be flooded. And I've never seen the city in my side yard, which is the same creek, clean that out. I'm not sure what the answer is, but, at least on an annual basis, they should be checked out and the gravel removed. Maybe you have to get permits to do it. I'm not sure about that, but it's, nobody's been out to look at that pile of gravel in East Hill. I drive by it every day and it's still there. So I thank you very much.
Good morning to the council. Thanks for letting me have the opportunity to speak. My name is Jonathan Sumner. I'm the owner of 1518 East McCarty Street, so just downstream of Jefferson apartments. I'm the owner of a 25-unit apartment complex. I had over a dozen tenants completely displaced now, and lives are ruined, like many others. I won't get into the details, but I had disabled elderly tenants who have lost everything, would have been wiped out. I do live in the floodplain, 100-year floodplain, and am aware of what that means. I did not have flood insurance. I was not financed through a bank, so I was not required. But I do want to talk about a couple of things that have already been addressed. So it's known fact that the city of Jefferson has commissioned multiple studies from Burns and Mcdonald, Black and Beach, to evaluate the stormwater system that the city has. Multiple times, those studies have come back and said, particularly in our area, that the 10x10 box culvert under East McCarty and others around the city are insufficient for a 25 or even a 10-year flood. So that's one issue. The one under East McCarty is a 10x10 box flood. So in 1986, in 2003, and then again more recently, these studies commissioned by the city, they've all said that that culvert in particular, among many others in the city, are insufficient. And the fact that the city has failed to do anything, I know that in 2017, more recently, there was a utility fee presentation given, and to my knowledge, that was voted down by the city council. And that, knowing that you have paid for a commissioned study, and that study came back with data showing the stormwater infrastructure was insufficient, and voting down a utility fee to fix those issues proves to be negligence, in my opinion. You know there's an issue, and you do not take the opportunity to fix the issue. The other thing that I want to talk about is the 100-year floodplain and other residents downstream who were not as affected. I know there are 1 or 2 houses on the other side of the party that may have been affected, but I have on my property, and specifically that 10x10 box culvert, 24-inch plus trees that someone had cut down with a chainsaw that ended up there or ended up clogged up in that culvert. That I don't know when they were cut down, I don't know who cut them down, and I don't know how long they've been there. But they proved a part in the sudden devastation of the flood. I went from no water, and I was 7-foot berm between the creek and my apartment complex. We went from no water to over chest high in most of the apartments in just a matter of 5 to 10 minutes. And some of the other folks have talked about that the storm debris has plugged up multiple culverts, and then once that breaks loose, it's almost like a tsunami, more or less, and then it piles up. And each time it did that at the culverts, it would go downstream and pile up. And so once it left the Bald Hill area and Christopher Place and went down, that's what happened in East McCarty. And that got plugged up with all the storm debris, and the water immediately backed up and went backwards into my apartments. And then once the storm drain had time to catch up, the water flowed out in less than an hour, just a matter of minutes. So the 2 points that I'm trying to make. The city knew that they had an infrastructure issue and failed to act on it. The city is responsible for keeping certain areas of the creek clean and debris removed. Whether it's the city that cut the trees down or somebody else, there was negligence involved because it was never cleaned up. And that is what led to part of the devastation of the flood in my property. So I, like others, am asking for city assistance in helping to clean up. I've been working with Mr. Fontana right now. As things stand, I am over the 50% requirement, so my apartment complex is at a complete loss. Therefore, I'll be ruined, and that's why I'm asking for city assistance with this help. If it does not happen, I have no other option. I'll be forced to get legal counsel to look further into the negligent issues that I've covered so far. Thank you. Any questions?
I see another hand, Mark.
Hello, my name is Debbie Cleavermas. I'm part owner of B&W Battery and Auto at 1530 East McCarty. On July the 19th, our whole life is just absolutely torn upside down due to the rainstorm. We have owned that company for 42 years, and we pretty well lost everything. It was like losing a part of a family member. When our customers, our employees have worked so hard to build B&W up as a small community business for the customers, the service that the employees of my husband's do. It was devastating due to a small error somewhere down the line. I'm not going to get into the details because I've heard everything about the floods and the creeks. But I just want you to know that I would appreciate if y'all would consider trying to fix a lot of these little areas that a lot of these residents have been talking to and talking about. It's like, okay, we lost, the employees all lost we're out of business now. Think about all the customers that my husband and his employees service, the vehicles. Our employees are out of a paycheck due to a simple error somewhere down the road in the creeks. I know y'all can figure that out. I just think that the city needs to be more concerned about the little creeks. And I don't know if you guys really realize how hard the labor of fixing and cleaning up all of the items from the flood, how hard it is. It's not like sitting behind a desk pushing a pencil, signing a paper. It is mentally and physically hard to do that cleanup. My husband and the employees down there, we are so blessed because of the customers that have came in and volunteered to help clean up. They have spent all day and night cleaning up. I'm talking scrubbing, cleaning, not. It's hard manual labor. And all I want to say is, please get behind fixing those creeks and all that stuff. The city does need to help the small business of us in Warwick Village, there and residents on the east side of town. That's all my main concern. And then I do have one more question. You mentioned earlier about the First Street Foundation. Say we had our house for 46 years. Okay, say if somebody was going in to buy a new home, is that one of the inspections? Are they aware of, say a young couple was buying it, are they aware of what flood elevation they're into? Is that something that is on the real estate? Are they told about that? I don't know. I don't plan on buying, but I'm looking out for the customers down the road.
Yeah, it's really, well, it's not well understood, number one, by many folks. And then secondly, it's not necessarily the FEMA maps that the banks regulate to are not very up to date. In some cases, they're completely out of date. They update, the last update for the regulated floodplain, I think, was in 2012, that the banks regulate too. However, what I always tell anybody buying a house or any piece of property in any city, this one or anywhere else, I've worked in other major cities, I would always contact the stormwater engineer at a city before I bought any property, including myself, if I moved to a new city, because it's so nuanced. I see what complaints there were about sewer or stormwater, just in case, because you'd be surprised the information that a guy like Don Montana or whoever might have that could help those. And it's it's free. It's just a phone call. But yeah, I would always caution people when they buy a piece of property to check into that. If it's not well documented. I think your homeowner's inspections don't really cover that to a high degree.
But why does it not cover it? It should be, if a young couple is buying a house, I'm sorry, for a young couple, they should be aware of the flood zone they are in. I'm looking out for the younger ones that's going to keep this community going. That should be, you do an inspection for termites and everything else, but why not the flood zone?
Just our common practice.
That's all I have to say. It's been devastating.
I'll make this short. We've been in that business, we've had that location for 42 years. And during that time, I watched McCarty Street completely redone, and they dug down to that box culvert. At that time, I wasn't in on it as much as Louis Better and some other people asked the city at that time to put another 5-foot culvert right beside it because they had it completely done. And again, they said it was through the budget. But at that time, that would have been pennies to replace that box culvert because they dug completely down. I watched dump trucks come in there, and they dug down so far that when they would dump the truck, only thing you could see was the tip of the bucket, and that's got to be at least 20 some feet down there. And I don't know if you all remember. I know you remember when that was all done. I don't understand why that didn't get done at that point. That blew my mind away because culvert double putting that other 5 foot on there, and everybody talks about it getting blocked. This time that culvert wasn't so much blocked. There was just so much water that it couldn't handle it. The barrels were floating above, which was probably 12 feet above the culvert. So the water was 12 feet above that culvert. The other end of it looked like a fire hydrant. It just like it was shooting out of it. So that's a problem. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
My name's Gloria Boat. I really don't live in a floodplain. I really don't know. I didn't make notes or anything. This is unexpected that I made it here. I do have an interest in some property at 1518 East McCarty. And my question is, the person that purchased the property has done a tremendous job cleaning it up, getting ready to renovate. It's a precious piece of property for elderly citizens, disabled people. It's a unique piece of property. And it was flooded, and my daughter and I, my daughter owned it for at least 12, 15 years. She bought it from Better. Never flooded. The last time it ever flooded was in '93. Okay, I was told, Jonathan Tammy's been so helpful, but I was told about the inches and gauges. I don't understand all that. I don't care. It was 10 inches on the gauge. It should never, ever have flooded like it did. So something's wrong, and nobody's getting any help. He has cleaned it up immensely. Then he's told to spend thousands and thousands of dollars doing so, working very hard. Then he's told FEMA is not going to allow, or whoever is not going to allow him to build except 50% of the value. I don't understand all that either. So if it wasn't an actual flood rains, actually just from flooding, they have control over that if it was from flooding. Who's FEMA to say that it's backed up or because of drainage and all this other stuff that everybody's talking about, that he has to go to the 50%? He's willing to remodel to code, plumbing, electrical, everything. What is that stand for? He's losing revenue. These people that love these apartments can't come back. And he's told he can't build back except to the FEMA's code. We're going to lift all those cottage square apartments down and put up. That's insane. There should be some kind of rule or regulation that could be overseen by this gentleman to put cottage court that has been there forever back and not go with that 50% ridiculous code that he has to go by. Do you want to build a concrete wall? You're telling him, not you, whoever, FEMA, whoever, tear down all that. We don't care. You already spent 25, 30,000 maybe cleaning it up. Now tear them all down and build in the floodplain. You'll be safe. We're not millionaire billionaires. All these people have normal wages. They're normal human beings. And we all love the Jefferson City, Missouri. I've been business owner. I've had Town Grill for 35 years, sold it. Had Santa Cruz Mexican restaurant, sold it.
And it's always been a beautiful place. Jefferson City's always been so wonderful in everything I've ever done. And I'm proud to say I live in Jefferson City, but this blew my mind that he cannot bring those back into your codes for these people to move back in. He's gonna have to build a 7-foot concrete wall all the way around or tear them all down. That's insane. Somebody's had to look up. He's willing to do it. He'd love to have some help. He's almost willing to do it, but he's not able to. And nobody's listening to anybody here. I had no notes and I came unexpected. So please help somebody. Thank you.
Anybody else? Just to her point, I guess, Matt or Ryan, about FEMA regulation. My understanding that if the property were being burned down by fire, the same 50% standards would apply.
Yeah, it's about a maintenance cost even. I mean, it could include many things. And it's a cumulative cost over so many years. So we had this on School Street, I think, you remember. Yeah. You know, it could include multiple things, not just for flood.
It applies to anything. Anything. If you're fine, we lost our airport. So it applies not only to public, it applies to government as well.
I just want to clarify, it's not about the source of what the type of flooding is. FEMA regulation.
Correct.
Okay, well, I think we've reached the point now, I don't know, Matt or Scott, maybe further share, questions, discussion.
Obviously, you know, I just start out by saying, yeah, very tragic incident, and we do feel for the people that are affected by it. Obviously, we try to get security help through the event, and things of that nature, and I think some people were helped out. Each instance is different. That's why it takes us so long as a small group here to go back and try to meet with individuals. And every property that's, even though it might be on the same stretch of creek, it's different, and solutions are different. So it's a very individualistic type thing. We could go through a whole, like many in the audience said about, we could go through a whole iteration of stormwater maps and why it happened. And I'm glad to do that. But, you know, we wouldn't have to, because I think people have voiced that, you know, it's kind of a technical deal, and I'm prepared to do it if we need to. Be glad to do it, or we can just meet individually. It's kind of up to the committee's pleasure. I think I heard from a lot of folks, I mean, especially at the Ball Hill Culvert, there was a lot of discussion about city debris and things like that. And so we went back, and we have a lot of pictures we could show and all that stuff. It's about just that culvert though, and many people may or may not be interested in that. We can do that here today. But as I heard from many people, there's debris, as I've said many times, every time it floods, we're out fishing debris out of culverts. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. We had to actually hire a track boat because we didn't have a big enough machine, and we fished a bunch of debris out of the culvert on Southwest Boulevard by the Ford dealer. Of course, the one at Ball Hill, there's a lot of debris. We have some pictures of that we took out, and so forth and so on. And you just go down the way and do it. And but that's kind of a natural thing about natural streams is erosion happens. You know, when it floods out, it grabs anything laying on the forest floor. It's not illegal for somebody to cut a tree down and have a brush pile or something unnecessarily on the property. But as floods happen, that's why when you go to the Missouri River, it's full of debris. It's trying to get it down the Gulf of Mexico eventually. But that's Mother Nature, and you know, we're coming in trying to put culverts on these things so we can pass over a road. And we tried, you know, in the Ball Hill case, we actually, a few years back, we went back and eliminated the middle stem wall because we kept getting so much brushing up on it, and cut that off, trying to keep that clear if we could. So, but really, I'd be prepared to go through all that if we'd like, but you know, I don't want to throw salt and things like that.
touch on that, Cherry, maybe what you could say. Because I have reached out.
I need to come up. I need to come up to the mic.
Yeah, and this is being recorded, by the way. We can put it out on the web for others of you that weren't able to make it, or, but this is also being recorded, and it's live if somebody wanted to plug in, because of COVID or something, want to show up.
Well, I'm sure you'd like to know what charities you're talking about, because I have reached out to charity after charity after charity. I'm doing everything myself. I work 12-hour nursing shifts. I got a cleaning bucket from Red Cross, and I had to go pick it up a weekend in that day. So I would like to have some names of some charities. They're willing to, if you talk about my house right now, go see the water heater sitting at the, go see my freshman guard sitting at there, you'll see people sitting at there. I have no way to get in. You know, like I said, I work in nursing, I don't make a whole lot of money. So I can't hire $15,000 after you come in and help me clean it up. I cleaned all that mud out of my basement for myself with that, for one person. And I had 6+ feet of water in my basement. I would like to have some charity.
If I could, Catholic Charities is handling the case management, trying to work through this with all these individuals. Sierra Thomas, our emergency management coordinator, actually just got our email from her that they are working through a declaration to the SBA, the Small Business Administration. So there are things going on, but Catholic Charities, along with all the United Way agencies, are trying to find assistance for folks. I believe the Baptist Church is trying to get together crews to come in and help to clean up. You know, these things do take time. The Catholic Charities is working as case management.
Yeah, I reached out to all of them.
Sir, you're saying about debris washing down and stuff like that, so it's supposed to help all down. Now, the question I have for that is literally we have pictures too of what was blocking it, and you can see chainsaw marks on the trees, right? You can go down the creek, you can see chainsaw marks where they cut the trees down. So that's not natural debris. That is city property. It was cut down late on city property. So, I mean, that causes a lot of this.
Yeah, and I can certainly pull those pictures up of the site we had. We have contractors doing that work and inspectors on the job, but, Rick, you want okay that we
Yeah, I
go
can show you pictures of it right now.
Yeah, we got several that we just pull up this is what we fished out of the creek, the Bald Hill, for example. Just give me a second here. Yeah, certainly we can get all that information. It was land, the name of the company, but we have all their contact information. Yeah, so this is what the creek Bald Hill looked like after the floodwaters went down. You know, a lot of, just everything. I did see a few saw marks in there, but where this came from exactly, I'm not sure. Obviously, it came out of the hill above, but if we want to go to some pictures, this is what the site was, there's a deer standing there, a little road. It was and go to some of the before pictures. Okay, zoom in on that, or that's kind of during construction. That's kind of after we were asked by some of the residents on the other side, we were lining the creek bank. And so we ended up, go ahead and zoom in there a little bit. This is the area of the creek bank that was worked on. And so we went ahead and lined all that with rock at some of the owner's requests. Our goal isn't to clear a creek, and that vegetation on a creek bank does help it hold together. So that's kind of what the area they worked on. And once they got to where they quit working, they stopped that rock. But if you go to the before, we have a video of the site before too, grid. Is mainly when we bought, we had to acquire the site from the adjoining property owner there. So he does a video, and mainly he was really looking at, if he tears up a driveway or a street as he's doing this work, we're going to make him fix it. So he's videoing all this, but you can see the field we put these pipes in. It'll be to the left there. It's just kind of an open field. I guess there were some trees in it, and they were logged before we acquired the property, is what I'm told. You'll see some stumps out there, and then there'll be some old stumps in the background, some big stuff. So what happened with the contract is this is a different than stormwater, but it affects stormwater, but it was a sanitary sewer project where they basically took this field, we took this field and lined it with large diameter pipes. And, you know, so as all that was dug out, that all had to be trucked away, all that extra soil and everything, because we replaced it with these big voids of pipes under the ground and manholes. And that the purpose of that was to help alleviate downstream sanitary backups during big flood events. And I heard some folks here say they had some sanitary backups anyway. Again, we use those design storms we're trying to work with, but was the site, you know, the kind of in the fall, I guess, it's kind of frosty there that morning when we acquired it, right before we started working, and then I think right before that when we showed the pictures. But anyway, you kind of see just a natural creek. And so that's where I'm sorry to say, but, creeks do, and everybody.
Yeah, but my question on that is I can walk through the creek and see where the cut trees are or where they were laying and not take that. And that's what, when you look at that damage that caused the flooding, sorry to say, you can see big trees, the chainsaw marks that caused it. So I get debris, but if you have something that's personally responsible for, that's causing debris to get bigger, then where's that on?
Yeah.
When you bought the property, that means you don't have to pick up the logs now.
Well,
They cut them down first.
Well, if I don't cut my grass, the city comes out with me.
Certainly, you can debate where all the debris come from, but,
Well, I can actually show you the pictures.
And that's, the on-site about it, even if you like. But, when you go back, we cleaned all that out of there. Like I said, it's not our inspector, it's not our comment either. It's mulched on site or hauled away. It's typically how that is contracted. And there was some negligence by the contractor. I talked to our inspector that was on the job all the time. And he said everything was hauled away from the site. Looking, we got a whole reel of construction photos. I didn't put them all in here, of course.
Right. I just don't know how it's all hauled away.
But I would say about the creek, if we want to get into this part of it, just about the creek, a study was done, brought it here, just a copy in '93. This has long been a problem. This study's from 1993 from Miller and Associates. And we have an engineer who's worked here for, I don't know, over 30 years, I believe. So he's kind of our historian, and we ask him about things, and he'll go find some study typically that was done way before I was working here. But anyway, the city did do a study back then on Bald Hill Culvert, because this has long been an issue, as one of the residents here had said. And in this study, they said that basically the culvert existing today, there's nothing structurally wrong with it per se. It flows water, so it gets hung up, of course. But it really was put in as a 10-year culvert, like I said here. He recalculated it. And then he goes on to say, because at this time, even the city was like, well, what could we do to help this situation out even back then? And he said the existing 9x4 really doesn't have any greater capacity than the original 10x4. And the reason is when you flow a culvert, you have to get a certain amount of water in front of it, so to push it through, right? And so the houses are built basically very level with the road. In some cases, there's even some dips in it. And so the culvert really only flows half full. Then some other recommendations is conclusions where even adding another cell to it, it can't build up any head because the houses are so low, doesn't really help anything. And so when we exceed that, the water's coming down the hillside at a higher elevation already. It's going to go across the top of the road. I don't want to get all technical about it here or anything like that, but I'm just trying to explain in simple terms. But he actually points out in this study that then there's additional storm drainage at 1522, 1412, 1410 Bald Hill that will not function except when low flow conditions are in the main creek. And so if you were to pull, Britt, you can go ahead and pull that map up, and maybe it's a little more clear what this is saying. And so, as a city staff, what we do is we just try to figure this stuff out and try to pass the information on. We're trying to give you all the information and not be, so that everybody has all the information they can get. And a lot of it's in various studies and various things. You can zoom in there a little bit. But this is the area we're talking about. So even on this, at the 100-year flow, they're showing a lot of this has a high potential to be inundated by stormwater because there's different pipes flowing into the area, things of that nature. this doesn't help you today, I understand that. And like I said, you know, in some areas of the country, there's talking about flood buyouts. It hasn't been prevalent in Missouri. That's a big federal program. There's also some discussion of maintenance, better maintenance of the city systems and improvements that can be done, detention basins, so forth and so on. Yes, all that is possible, but we have looked at these studies have come to the conclusion that the need is so great there probably have to be another funding source if we were to even start tackling these, and it's a long process.
Well, right, and I get that,
Yeah,
but I'm not
so
worried
I'm
about
not
that.
trying
I
to-
really don't care, because
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with the situation I'm in now.
Yeah.
So we can talk about all that once
Yeah,
we get past
sure.
the situation.
I just wanted to say, you're referencing the 1993 study. That was before they built a zillion houses up Bald Hill Road. And all that water sheds down. And so it's not the same situation. And nothing was done to address that issue, that more water was coming down. Yes, it was a big rain, but more water is running down from everywhere into that area. And that needs to be addressed, please.
Now, new development, there are, you know, I don't want to get in an argument with the situation, but new development, we do the best we can with stormwater detention basins and things of that nature that really hold back, you know, 25 to 100-year storms, depending on the location, the best of their ability. Now, again, this was could approach a 1,000-year storm. It's an unprecedented event. Now, I don't want to get into the discussion if you climate change or worst storms or any of that. I think there's a lot of national headlines in the science community about this, and that's this site even has some discussion about it, that areas are more flood prone than they have been in the past. And so here in the last, 3 years or so, we've had major floods. Now, this is a different flood too than Missouri River flooding is different. Missouri River flooding is a long time coming, bigger basin. They predicted we can react to it and all that. This is a flash flood where basically everybody here has testified the same thing. Within a few minutes, their whole house is underwater. You can't react to that. That's why, you know, it's really a difficult situation, obviously. And, you know, I don't have any good solutions for it either, other than there is, and maybe the next meeting we can try to get a flood insurance expert. I'm not an insurance guy, I'm not a banker, and I'm not a lawyer, but maybe we can get a flood insurance person to come. And I think we posted these in the past at the city, where we've had some people come and talk about flood insurance from the city, the state, or whomever. And we've had insurance agents on the council in the past that I've talked to about it as well. And so, again, it doesn't do anything for today's problem.
I would say to everybody here that, I mean, the council hears you, Councilman Fitzwater apologizes, he's late for another work-related meeting this morning, but I think they extended this day to hear all of the public comment. Stormwater issues, and this is my 8th year on the council, have been an issue since I started on the council. And it has a tendency to move its way around the community, where it's a few years ago in the 3rd Ward, there's pretty significant issues in the Valley Park neighborhood, and some homes there, versus flash flooding.
And those flooded as well this time.
And unfortunately, I think it's been in some other wards, other parts of the city based on the storm. The storm, I think the heavy rainfall happened more located in your area versus other parts of the city. You're right. I don't want to like Lane say it's a budget issue. We allocate $360,000 a year towards stormwater projects in the capital improvement sales tax. That's a 1/2-cent sales tax that funds a whole host of capital improvements across the state. I think 3 years ago when we talked about the stormwater utility fee, which did not, I supported it and think that we needed it. I think our needs list was potentially $30 to $45 million worth of projects citywide that we need to get addressed. It is a serious issue. 79% of the city's general revenue budget is spent on personnel. Half of the city's, 52% of the city's budget is spent on public safety alone. And so again, it's not the point to say that there are priorities, but the city budget is what it is. Revenue doesn't grow as fast as we would like it to keep up on these things. I think that the council recognizes that there are growing needs in all sorts of places within the city. Now, we can't replace police vehicles pushing out. We can't replace other infrastructure projects putting out. Stormwater is one of those that's really just a ticking time bomb in a lot of places. I get it, I empathize with you, but it's an extremely serious issue that is going to take some creative funding or some new revenue sources to help address the issue, especially if we continue to see storm. Because I think back to 2016, that was like a series of three storms, I believe, in 5 or 6 weeks. That at that point we call 100-year storms.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, our system, if it gets 100-year, 500-year, 1,000-year storm, it's extremely hard on the system. And I know some of those storms in particular, I think they were preceded by a lengthy dry spell, which didn't help the cause because the ground was so hard and dry that the water was right off the well. And I think the hard part from the city perspective is that money and answers don't come today. That it's been city practice to not, just come in and pay for that cost, because there's a process to do that. That if we open the door to say, here is money to correct your particular issue, if it doesn't fall within standard practice for how the city approaches these particular claims, then we will have a room full of folks for all sorts of reasons in every meeting for any number of issues to address those, and the city will not have the resources to do that. There's no way to fund that sort of activity. And I know that's not a great answer to give, and I know that you are facing hardship on correcting and addressing your personal situations to rebuild, rehab, and take care of your property. I do know that over the years, city staff, though, and council work one-on-one with folks to figure out situations. And I know that may not end in a palatable solution or compromise to you, but I know that Matt and Don and his team on the stormwater side, what I've experienced on site, talking to folks about stormwater issues or hearing feedback, is that they're available as best they can be. These sorts of situations overwhelm their ability to get out, but that they spend time on site to look at the property to figure out what solutions exist. I recognize there are bigger issues to tackle about a culvert system, how the water flows, and debris that gets in there. But I don't know if that gets solved today, and if a solution can be reached today. But I do know that again, an event like this has raised awareness of this particular issue to myself, at least, never really went away. A few years back, when the utility fee didn't pass, the council did pull out some money out of reserves to hire a 3-person crew and gave them some dollars to go around and start fixing some of the small issues that build up. That instead of contracting out some work and you just need to fix something on the street, that crew goes out and fix it. And so it was an attempt to try to troubleshoot some of the smaller projects that build up. But I know in Matt and his team, there are some large scale infrastructure issues that we address. There's just not a good funding source identified to address those things because they are into the tens of millions of dollars. And so I don't have an answer today, and this committee is not authorized to take any action on behalf of the council. We are a committee that can make recommendations for action at the full council, but we don't speak on behalf of the whole city today. We can't authorize any action that we do. Anything that would be done on behalf of the city would have to be done by the full council through the normal council procedure. I say all of that to say, I think I speak for the 4 of us and 5 of Todd. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you sharing your stories. We're empathetic and recognize this is a hard time to work through. And then I think we would like to find not only good solutions to address the bigger issues, but ways to help you all out, to make sure that you're able to get your property back to what it's.
I was just gonna say that Councilmember Vogt and Mayor Turgeon are also listening online, so they are been able to listen to some of the comments. We'll make sure all of council gets a copy of the recording. I think that there's there may be a few long-term ideas at least that staff can work on. I'll follow up with staff on the tree limb issue just to make sure we got that clarified. Catholic Charities, and I don't have their number offhand, but you can get that through United Way too. That's also a good resource for cleaning up if that's still an issue for some folks.
I appreciate everybody coming today, and I full well understand the problem with Ball Creek on Ball Hill. I grew up at 1508 Ball Creek, and right behind that property. My family owned that property for 62 years. Parents built the house there in the 1950s. Back in the 1970s, there were some issues with the creek, and my father, Moyer family, East family, both family, talked to the city engineer at the time, and at that time, they told me the creek was responsibility of Mr. Gunderson on the property. And so consequently, they went to Mr. Gunderson, and as a result, the families that I mentioned have paid to have Mr. Gunderson do some alterations on the creek. Back then, it was not regulated by the Corps of Engineers, and there was some correction done, and then I know that any trees that were cut in by our family on their property and the others, they always piled them, which still remain there to this day. Hardly rotted away, but I know full well the problem was experienced, particularly by the Edson family down at the corner of Kelly. John Edson was in my wedding, so he would have been here today, but John is up in years and Deanne's and ill health, so he was unable to come. So I do fully understand the problem with Walls Creek and some of that. One thing that does concern me, I was down there that night because I was so concerned about Deanne and John, and I saw what the flood went down. And one thing that does concern me is, and I think I have an idea where it may have come from, but I can't prove it. But I was very concerned about seeing appliances coming down the creek. Those were obviously dumped in the creek by somebody from on up above. And so those kinds of things are, even though the city should keep the culverts and everything clear of debris, has to be a proactive approach. I am concerned with individual property owners along any creek in the city of Jefferson that may be doing that kind of thing, dumping into a creek. That's a problem. That's not something that helps stabilization when you have an unprecedented flash flood like we have. Mr. Marash was right. I was extensively involved in the 93 flood, and the 93 flood was different because the Missouri River causes those tributaries to back up rather than having a full like we had on 19. So I don't know what the answer is, but I can certainly tell you that I do understand that what you're going through, it's not good. I mean, in the hall, we built a house down Coward's Lane. We were very good friends with them. So, I appreciate you coming today, and I wish I had some answers for you. Thank you.
On behalf of the appliance center, there was a small mini fridge that was on top of the bridge, watched over the bridge. You have usually watched through the bridge. I just want to make sure that the facts are there. What was there? I don't want people, when you said, I don't want when you sat there and you say appliances were coming down, people to think that refrigerators and stoves and large appliances were coming down. It was an appliance. It was a small mini fridge. And I just wanted to state on behalf of I don't think, I think everybody understands that there are budgetary issues. I work at the Capitol, I deal with the budget every day in the state. I completely understand that there's budgetary issues. I think the bigger issue here is telling the citizens of the city is, we know there's a large issue here, deal with it until we fix it. And if you have loss, you have loss. And I know that's not what you're meaning or what you're trying to say, but that is how it's coming off to the people here. We're here to ask for your help and for your recommendations to the city to make us whole. We're not trying to make a cash cow, but you keep talking about the budget, and what is the city's budget going to look like when resident after resident after resident starts suing the city? I'm not saying that we're going to win every single lawsuit, but I'm saying that the city's also not going to win every lawsuit, and what is the city's budget going to look like then? That is why I mentioned maybe there needs to be some type of flood insurance for the city to cover areas like that until these stormwater drains are fixed. Because you guys have acknowledged numerous times that there's big issues. Everybody in this room knows that there's big issues. We're not blaming you because there's issues with stormwater drains. We understand they need to be fixed, and we understand that money needs to be there. But our homes also need to be fixed. You guys don't live in stormwater drains. None of us do, but we live in homes that a lot of us don't have anymore. And that's where the issue is, and that's what we're asking for, is help to make us whole again. That's where our issues are.
Okay.
I just feel, and this is, sorry.
I just feel if this has been a concern since 1993 or how long it's been, that it should be a priority on your list instead of worrying about the budget. I mean, most people do put priority things on. And if Jeff City has had this issue, I think it should be dealt with. Or at least be more, y'all should be more concerned about it instead of waiting this many years to fix the issue. That's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
I was just gonna say, if you're getting close to concluding, it's like.
It's really easier.
Please don't lose the fact that rural from FEMA are here at 50% because you're asking people to tear down their property. He's willing to fix it back to code, and that 50% rule would not allow him to do so. Thank you.
Just for clarity, that's not our rule.
It is our rule, but it's a rule that we are mandated to implement. And we've dealt with this, and I asked the question, we did not enforce the 50% rule. We do not get to participate in the FEMA flood insurance program, and we would not be eligible for FEMA disaster relief for things like the tornado. The consequences of not enforcing the 50% are dire. It's just not.
Okay, if we're getting ready, I just want to make two things. One, I think the system may be, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, inadequate, but it is working as a 10-year system or whatever that may be. It needs to be more based on current standards, but I don't want to give the impression that there was something not operating at least somewhat correctly at that point. The other thing is, I think most people have a chance to sign in with their contact information, but if they didn't, there's another form out here. You can certainly sign in. That way we can make sure we've got the contact information, that when we get those answers together, we make sure we can get that out to everybody. Although we probably already have many people, but it would be good to have it given us that information to get that.
Anything else, Council?
I just like to mention that the city is currently working on its comprehensive plan, and certainly stormwater issues have been an issue for a while. Citizens maybe need to have input to what should be in that comprehensive plan going forward.
I just said, I know I've spoke to several of you, and hopefully I continue to talk to several of you about the issue and just communication between the city and you to try to find a solution. I know this is tough. I'm sorry that you guys are dealing with this, but I know that we're all looking to assist you as much as we can. I know even staff, even though that sometimes you hear them, maybe aren't on your side, but I know that they're also looking for areas where they can assist if they can. So I hope that we all continue to kind of work through this. I don't have an answer to it. I know a lot of us don't have an answer to it, but I think the goal is to find the answer. So let's hope that communication line keep going.
And maybe one suggestion, I know we're very slow to some folks, maybe in the time frame of getting back to folks. I'll try to set some few days aside or something like that on maybe Dawn and my calendar to where you, even if you can't get a hold of us, maybe you can, if you would call our receptionist and get a slot in those days, we can meet with you individually that way. We can make sure we get to you in your time frame in a day that's as amenable to you. Everybody's got things to do. I know that. They spend a lot of time here away from work Friday this morning, but that way you're not wondering when you're getting a call or something like that. So we'll try to get that set up, and you can just call our main line at 634-6410. Get on our calendars in the next week or so. I've done that recently to the person, his calendar and mine didn't align, and we got a meeting a week and a half from now. I said it's on the calendar, so that makes us show up and do it. That's the kind of thing.
All right, question. Is it the possibility to move gravel from creek nature to keep it up and the water?
No, it's not. Again, all the the codes and its national codes is, and there's other issues with the size of creeks and removing gravel. There's actually regulations about removing gravel in creeks, but we can certainly talk to you about it. Yeah, particular item.
Anything else from the members?
I'll move to adjourn.
Councilman Hussey, Councilman, this is Mayor Turgeon. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Just wanted to make a quick comment here before you adjourn. Thank you all for coming, and I certainly can't imagine dealing with what the residents and businesses have. And I did want to mention the phone number for Catholic Charities. I think it came up earlier in the meeting about people trying to reach out to them. And Alyssa Marlowe is the contact. Her phone number is 635-7719. And if you're not able to reach her, I know Ann Bax from United Way, as part of the long-term recovery committee, we've had several talks about the flooding. Alyssa has reached out directly to the city, so I know she is in communication with our Public Works Department. So I wanted to give her number. And I know just the unexpected nature of this storm and the flash flooding, I'm thankful everybody's okay. It is extremely frustrating when things like this happen, and I just feel like our community's really been faced with some of these things that we don't normally see really in a lifetime over the last year, having a tornado and a hailstorm and a flash flood of this magnitude. I mean, these are things that we've really had a lot of, and I really do feel for the property owners and businesses and homeowners that have had to deal with this. And I appreciate you, Matt, for giving out your contact information. As council members and mayor, we've given a lot of residents your number, and I know you're definitely following up with everyone, and so we appreciate that. And you mentioned also bringing an insurance person maybe to give some feedback. I think that would be helpful. I know we realize that even after the tornado, just how complex insurance is, and I think that anything that could help residents and business owners alike with that kind of information, as it was during the tornado, could be helpful in this case as well, to kind of bring that education component of insurance, because I'm hearing different things about whether people can get it or if it's available or not. So I think there's a lot of information out there that would be helpful. I know it doesn't necessarily help for this incident, but could for the future. So again, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Councilman Hussey.
Yeah, Brett was good enough to type those numbers up there, and 6410, that's our main line. And we'll, after this meeting, I'll talk with our Dawn and my schedule and try to get some days set aside where we don't have to
sometimes we're out in the field visiting with people, it's hard to get a hold of us, so if you could call this and she could probably rearrange the time for us on our own calendars, that way you don't have to keep calling, or we don't have to call an issue, or whatever it happens to be. And I would say also, I know it's on the charity side, many times what we deal with on that is there's some of these, and I've heard a lot about the creeks and debris in it that you're not able to remove. Some of these groups have individuals, and they helped out a lot during the tornado, that want to come in and call them chainsaw gangs and help people on their property, clear debris, and that's their bread and butter that they want to do and are really wanting to help people do that. And I don't know if they've been talked to about that specific issue just in the creek or anything behind your home. Again, it's private property, you have to give permission to get in there, but they'll come and knock on your door sometimes, and then just you'd be surprised at the work that these groups can accomplish in a short amount of time. So that's their bread and butter. They like to do.
Yeah, and I've been working with a long-term recovery committee that the mayor mentioned. And the Baptist Church, they are heading up that group. It actually encompasses a lot of different charities. But in the days of COVID, everything is slower. We're trying to figure out how to do this well. So please work through Catholic Charities as case management, and they are then working that out down to the other agencies.
So back to the motion, Mike made, second, all in favor, would you say aye?
Aye.